Happy Friday and welcome back to our conversation as a work week is coming to its conclusion. Our conversation this week about how we can choose to live our lives with congruence is kind of peaking today, coming to an exclamation point. All week long, we've had a conversation about how we can choose to live, authentically choose to live with congruence. What we want and who we are on the inside is making its way to the outside, and nothing captures that more than with virtue. Let me just begin by acknowledging that I've heard countless people say that one of the things that inspires them to live the faith is when they see it in the lives of people, when they see change, when they see Christians living like Christians. And perhaps the thing that is most uninspiring and maybe even most detrimental to the movement of Christ on earth today is when we don't see congruence in the lives of Christians. In other words, we're not living what we profess. We're not living in our choices that which we're telling the world we believe, right? It's our lifestyles. It's the way that we live, the choices that we make, which are the real litmus test, you might say, for whether we are living in congruence with who we are. And that brings us into the importance of virtue. Virtue, you might say, an easy way for us to look at the word virtue is, do we know the right thing to do and do we do it, right? If you look at the etymology of the word virtue, it goes back and signifies almost courage, right? The courage to do the right thing. I have to know what the right thing is. I have to know the good, and then I have to choose to do the good, right? And that's just really important for us if we're going to live in congruence, if we're going to live authentically with what the Lord is asking of us. If we're going to live in our relationship with God, then we have to live it, right? We have to make choices. And we live in a time where we are surrounded by an over-emotionalism, where our feelings and how we feel this day is more influential in what we do rather than the call of God in our life. And if you want to see what influences our actions, I want to bring you back to where we were Wednesday and Thursday. So hang with me here. Wednesday, we talked about how it's tempting for us to live with our mission in front of us. That determines our identity, and then that is what we project in our relationship with God. And if we're living with our identity driven by what we do in life, then I also bet that we're going to be overly influenced by our emotions, because our emotions are often influenced by how much stock we take in the practicalities of circumstances, the success and failures of life. In other words, if that's who I am, if my identity is determined by my success and failure, then that is going to make me feel a certain way, and that's going to make me perceive who I am a certain way, and I'm going to make choices out of my emotions. Yesterday, we talked about flipping that on its head, how our relationship with God, more than anything else, determines who I am. And from there, I receive the mission. And if I'm living with my relationship with God more important than anything else, and if He and He alone determines who I am, then my desire to stay with God and to do what God wants me to do, even when my emotions are off, when I don't feel God or feel good about the circumstance, I can still choose Him rather than choosing to act out of my emotions. To know the good and to do it, right? Prudence. To choose the good even when I'm struggling, fortitude, right? To choose the right thing in my relationship with people. We call that justice. And to choose the good with all my other appetites. We call that temperance. Those four cardinal virtues are significant influences in a person who's growing in the spiritual life. We need to make choices in our life if we are going to stay in our relationship with God, but we need to make choices in our life if we're going to live in congruence with Him. It's been a big week, and if we're going to recap the week, just stay with me here, right? God and God alone is the one who loves us more than anything else. God and God alone is the one who determines who I am. And if God and God alone determines who I am, then I want to stay in relationship with him and let him inform everything else. And if that's going to happen, then I have to engage my will and make choices even when I might be tempted to do otherwise. We call that virtue. This week has almost been a capstone of the entire podcast series, Choose to Live. And for your homework this week, what I encourage you to do is this. Take some time over the weekend and re-listen to all the podcasts this week. Take some extra time to pray and some extra time to do some of the homework that maybe you didn't get to do. Come on back tomorrow. We're going to kind of recap how this particular theme fits into the rest of the podcast series. We're going to get ready for Mass this weekend and look ahead to next week. But until that happens, enjoy the extra time of reflection. Be gentle with yourself and let the Lord love you. And until we have that conversation tomorrow, God bless you.